Okay, in Romans chapter 13, Paul is going to get into some of the political implications for being a Christian. And if you've never read chapter 13 before, just get ready, because there's some really personal and powerful stuff here that you have to wrestle with as you apply this in today's culture, today's society. He says in verse 1, everyone must submit to governing authorities, for all authority comes from God, and those in positions of authority have been placed there by God. Now, maybe you think, well, there's no way that that could still be true today, but just keep in mind that the rulers in Paul's day were even less godly than the rulers in our day. So if it was true then, maybe it is true today, right? He says, so anyone who rebels against authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and they will be punished. For the authorities do not strike fear in people who are doing right, but in those who are doing wrong. He says, would you like to live without fear of the authorities? Then do what is right, and they will honor you. The authorities are God's servants, sent for your good. It's interesting because this is almost sort of a biblical explanation of the job description of politicians. He said, politicians are God's servants. Even if they're not Christians, they should be sent for your good. But if you're doing wrong, of course you should be afraid, for they have the power to punish you. They are God's servants, sent for the very purpose of punishing those who do what is wrong. Now, if you want more on this, I'll put some links below to your role as a Christian in politics. I'll put some more on some bad ideas that we can sometimes get about God and government. So if you want to dig into the political ramifications of your faith, I encourage you to check those out down below. But Paul transitions in the second section of this chapter to a more general understanding of love and our requirement to follow God and to love other people. He says in verse 8, owe nothing to anyone except for your obligation to love one another. If you love your neighbor, you will fulfill the requirements of God's law. And then he gets into some of the Old Testament law, verse 9. He says, the commandments say you must not commit adultery, you must not murder, you must not steal, you must not covenant. So he's listing out some of the 10 commandments. And he says, these and other such commandments are summed up in this one commandment. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? So that right there, that is coming straight from Matthew 22. It's exactly what Jesus said. He said the law can be summed up like this: love God and then love your neighbor as yourself. And so Paul is repeating this, the greatest commandment. And it's pretty clear that he understands the simplicity of this. And we should also remember this today. And then he says this in verse 12, the night is almost gone. The day of salvation will soon be here. So remove your dark deeds like dirty clothes. What a great image. And he says, and put on the shining armor of right living. What a great passage that is, right? Paul is telling us we should live differently as Christians, right? Not just with politics, but even just in general, in the way that we relate to people in society. So you're ready to read Romans 13. We'll see you tomorrow for chapter 14.